The scratching sound was faint, almost imperceptible amid the buzz of the gala party taking place upstairs. Diane stopped in the middle of the hallway of the Whitmore mansion, holding the cleaning cloth with her hands still damp. 42 years old, 20 of them dedicated to keeping that property spotless, and she had never heard anything like it. A desperate, metallic scratching coming from inside the basement walls. Above her head, Italian leather heels echoed on the marble as Boston's elite celebrated the 75th birthday of Eleanor Whitmore, the feared and respected matriarch. Diane knew every inch of that mansion. She knew the secrets those walls held, extramarital affairs, hidden addictions, dirty deals. But this was different. This was urgent. Alive. She descended 3 more steps toward the service basement, an area Eleanor had forbidden any employee from accessing for the past 2.5 months. Structural renovations, the lady had said, with that icy smile that didn't reach her eyes. Diane had accepted the explanation as she accepted everything in that house, with her head down and her mouth shut. Black women who questioned their millionaire white employers didn't last long in their jobs. The scratching intensified. 3 faint knocks. Pause. 3 knocks again. A pattern. A cry for help. Diane's heart raced. She glanced behind her to make sure she was alone, then pressed her ear against the exposed brick wall. The sound was coming from behind the old wood paneling Eleanor had installed, supposedly to preserve the mansion's historic structure. Please. The voice was so low that Diane almost thought she had imagined it. Female. Young. Desperate. Someone, help me. Diane felt her blood run cold. Someone was locked in there. How long had they been in there? 2.5 months, coinciding with Eleanor's ban? It couldn't be a coincidence. Her hands trembled as she touched the wooden panel. It was new, the screws still shiny. Installed recently, hastily, without the meticulous finish Eleanor normally demanded. As if the goal was not aesthetics, but functionality. Confinement. I can hear you, Diane whispered, pressing her lips against a tiny crack in the wood. Who are you? Silence. Then a muffled sob. Sophia. My name is Sophia Whitmore. The surname hit Diane like a punch in the stomach. Whitmore. Family. But Diane knew all the Whitmores. She had worked there for 2 decades. Christopher, Eleanor's only son, lived in New York. He had no children. He never mentioned a Sophia. Unless there was something no one knew about. Something buried long ago. How old are you? Diane asked, already dreading the answer. 23. Please, I've been here so long. She said it was temporary, that she needed to think, but 23 years old. The age-matched stories Diane had heard from older employees, whispers about a strange time 2 decades ago when Eleanor disappeared for months and came back different. Harder. Colder. As if she had buried something that could not return to the surface. Diane backed away from the wall as if she had been burned. Eleanor wasn't just hiding a person. She was hiding a daughter. A daughter she had erased from her own history. Footsteps upstairs. Eleanor coming down. Diane heard the matriarch's sharp voice dismissing some guest. In seconds she would be in the hallway. Diane moved away from the wall, pretending to clean a nearby picture frame. Her reflection in the glass showed a frightened woman, but not a surprised one. 2 decades in that house had taught her that monsters don't wear masks, they wear pearls and expensive perfume. Eleanor appeared at the top of the stairs, her navy blue silk dress impeccable, her diamond necklace catching the light. Her eyes met Diane's with calculated coldness. Diane dear, I thought I was clear about the basement. Her voice was soft, but the threat was evident. Are you lost? No, Mrs. Whitmore. Just checking that the service areas are presentable. The party looks beautiful. Eleanor descended 2 more steps, narrowing her eyes. It is. It would be a shame if anything disrupted the celebration. You understand what I'm saying, don't you? Diane nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Perfectly, ma'am. Good. Now go back upstairs. There are glasses to be collected. Diane climbed the stairs, feeling the weight of Eleanor's gaze on her back. Every step was a choice. Every second of silence was complicity. But Diane knew that direct accusations didn't work against people like Eleanor. Black women accusing wealthy white matriarchs were dismissed, discredited, destroyed. No. If Diane was going to expose this horror, she would have to be smart, strategic, irrefutable. As she collected champagne glasses in the ballroom, watching Eleanor smile at judges, politicians, and businessmen, Diane made a decision. The party was being recorded by professional photographers. The family's social media accounts were public. And Diane had something Eleanor didn't realize: 20 years of loyalty that gave her access to everything. Sophia Whitmore would not be just another secret buried in a wall. Diane would make sure of that. What Eleanor didn't know was that behind the quiet cleaning lady was a woman who had learned to survive by being underestimated. And that in the next 72 hours, the truth about that family would spread in a way that no amount of money could erase. If this story is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what you'll discover in the next parts will prove that justice doesn't always come from the courts, but from the courage of those who refuse to be accomplices to evil. Diane didn't sleep that night. Lying in the small maid's room on the 3rd floor of the mansion, she stared at the ceiling while her mind worked at full speed. Sophia was just a few feet below, locked up, probably hungry and terrified. Every minute of silence was torture. But acting rashly would mean destroying any chance of actually saving her. At 5 in the morning, as she had done every day for 20 years, Diane went downstairs to begin her routine. The mansion still smelled of champagne and wilted roses. Eleanor was fast asleep. The sleeping pills ensured that. The house was vulnerable. Diane went straight to Eleanor's office. Her hands didn't shake as she typed in the computer password. She had memorized it years ago when Eleanor asked her to print urgent documents. Rich employers never imagine that employees pay attention. What she found in the files was devastating. Emails. Hundreds of them. Correspondence with a private clinic in Vermont dating back 23 years. Eleanor had become pregnant by James Morrison, the family's black driver. Diane recognized the name from old payroll files. A married man who mysteriously disappeared shortly after the birth of a child who was never mentioned. Sophia was born in secret. She was raised in a private boarding school under a false name. Eleanor paid for everything, but never visited. Until 10 weeks ago, when Sophia turned 23 and decided to confront her biological mother. She wanted answers. She wanted family. Eleanor responded by locking her daughter in a wall. The recent emails were even more shocking. Eleanor planned to transfer Sophia to a specialized institution, a euphemism for a private hospice. The transfer was scheduled for 2 days from now. Diane photographed each document with her cell phone. Then she went down to the basement. "Sophia," she whispered through the crack in the wall. "It's me, Diane. The cleaning lady. Listen, I'm going to get you out of there, but I have to do it the right way. Do you trust me?" The sob on the other side was answer enough. "Please," she said, "no one would come looking for me. You're not a mistake. You're a daughter who deserves to exist." Diane took a deep breath. "Can you hold out for 2 more days? I'll leave food and water hidden here." 2 days? Why not now? "Because if I just open this wall, Eleanor will destroy us. She has lawyers, politicians, judges in her pocket. Her word against mine." Diane pressed her hand against the wood. "But if we do this publicly with evidence in front of witnesses, she won't be able to escape." Diane contacted Reverend Marcus Thompson, leader of the Baptist church she had attended for 15 years. A respected man in Boston's black community. She showed him the photos of the documents. Marcus turned pale. "My God, Diane. This is confinement. Abuse." He held her hands. "We need more than photos. We need Sophia telling her own story. Live." That's when Diane had an idea. Eleanor was hosting a charity tea party at the mansion in 2 days, an annual event broadcast live on social media, with digital influencers and local journalists. The broadcast reached thousands of people in real time. What if the truth came out right in the middle of the broadcast? Diane murmured. Eleanor couldn't delete it. It would be live. For everyone to see. Marcus nodded. "You'd have to get Sophia off the wall without Eleanor noticing." "Leave it to me." The night before the tea party, while Eleanor slept sedated, Diane returned to the basement with tools from the maintenance shed. She worked in absolute silence, removing the screws from the panel millimeter by millimeter. Sophia was unrecognizable. Thin, dirty, with deep dark circles under her eyes. But alive. Diane helped her out, supporting her trembling body. Diane hid Sophia in the maid's room, locking it from the inside. She spent the night taking care of her: water, light food, a hot bath. Sophia cried in her arms like a child. "Why are you doing this?" Sophia asked through her tears. "You don't even know me." "Because I know what it's like to be invisible. To be treated as if you don't matter." Diane wiped the girl's face. "And because no one deserves to be erased from their own existence." On the morning of the charity tea, the mansion was bustling with preparations. Eleanor was radiant, smiling for the cameras, feigning generosity while a daughter was nearly starving to death in her own home. Diane dressed Sophia in discreet clothes and hid her in the laundry closet, near the main hall. Marcus was positioned among the guests. 3 journalists he knew were also present, alerted that something important would happen. The live broadcast began at 2 p.m. Eleanor spoke about charity, about family. Every word was pure hypocrisy. Diane waited for the right moment. The peak audience. Eleanor raised her teacup. To family, to love. Bonds that you broke by locking your own daughter in a wall. Diane's voice cut through the room like a knife. What no one in that mansion could have predicted was that this moment would mark not only the fall of a matriarch, but proof that bought silence always finds courageous voices willing to break it. The silence that followed was deafening. All heads turned. The cameras continued to broadcast live. 3,000 people watching in real time. Eleanor paled, but quickly regained her composure with the skill of someone who had spent a lifetime building masks. "Diane, I think you're confused. Maybe you need medical help." "I'm not confused. I'm revealing the truth." Diane walked to the center of the hall, each step firm and determined. Sophia Whitmore, 23 years old. Your daughter with James Morrison. Locked in a basement wall of this mansion for the past 2.5 months because you are ashamed that she exists. Whispers exploded among the guests. Cell phones were raised, recording everything. Eleanor tried to laugh, but the sound came out strangled. "This is absurd. This woman is delusional. Security, please. Then explain these documents." Marcus stood up from the audience, showing the large printed photos. Dated emails. Records of payments to the boarding school. Plans for forced admission to a psychiatric institution. Explain it to the people watching live right now. The cameras focused on the documents. The digital influencers broadcast to their own followers. The number of viewers jumped from 3,000 to 8,000 in seconds. There was no way to delete it. Eleanor clung to the table, her fingers white with force. "You don't understand. It was to protect her. Society is cruel too. The only cruel thing here is you." The voice came from the entrance to the hall. Sophia appeared. Pale, thin, trembling but upright. Her eyes, the same blue eyes as Eleanor's, fixed on the mother who had imprisoned her. The hall was completely paralyzed. "Mother." The word came out like an accusation. "I spent 23 years dreaming of this moment. Imagining what it would be like to meet you. To hug you." Sophia took a step forward. "You locked me in the dark. You left me hungry. You told me I was a mistake that needed to be corrected." Eleanor staggered backward, knocking into the table and toppling the tower of porcelain cups, which shattered on the floor. The noise echoed like a gunshot. "You don't understand what your existence would do to our reputation." "Our reputation?" Sophia laughed humorlessly. "You mean yours. The truth is, you had an affair with a black man, got pregnant, and decided it was easier to erase me than face the prejudice of your wealthy friends." One of the journalists stepped forward, microphone extended. "Ms. Whitmore, do you confirm that you kept your daughter in confinement?" Eleanor opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. Her eyes scanned the room for allies, but found only horrified faces, cameras, recordings. I needed time to think." 10 weeks. Diane's voice cut through the air. "You needed almost 3 months to decide if your own daughter deserved to live in the light of day?" That's when Eleanor made the fatal mistake. Her face contorted in pure rage, the mask finally slipping. She showed up at my door demanding recognition. Demanding to be part of this family. As if I could just introduce her to society after 23 years. "So you locked her away. Marcus held up another document. And you plan to transfer her to a psychiatric institution tomorrow, falsely diagnosing her as mentally disturbed. You had even paid the doctors. The number of online viewers exceeded 15,000. Comments exploded. Hashtags formed in real time. Hashtag Justice for Sophia was starting to go viral. Eleanor realized it too late. Her entire life, built on appearances and control, was falling apart live on camera. Turn off those cameras. Turn them off now. But no one turned them off. The influencers continued broadcasting. The journalists continued recording. The truth was spreading like wildfire. One of the guests, a federal judge whom Eleanor always boasted of as a close friend, approached with a grave expression. Eleanor, I'm going to need you to stay in town. Illegal confinement, attempted forced hospitalization. These are serious crimes. Helen, you can't. We've been friends for. We were. The judge turned her back. Other guests did the same. Within minutes, Eleanor was alone in the center of the room, surrounded by cameras and looks of disgust. Sophia approached her mother. For a moment, it looked like she was going to hug Eleanor. Instead, she took a small tape recorder out of her pocket, a gift Diane had given her the night before. This contains your voice. Recordings from the last few weeks when you came to visit me in the basement. Sophia pressed play. Eleanor's voice filled the room. You are a mistake that should never have happened. Your existence ruins everything I have built. If I could go back in time, I would have made sure you were never born. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the cameras seemed to have stopped breathing. Eleanor collapsed into a chair, her face in her hands, finally broken. Sophia turned off the recorder and handed it to the judge. Justice is not revenge. Sophia looked at her mother one last time. It's making sure no one else goes through what I went through. It's giving a voice to the silenced. Diane put her hand on Sophia's shoulder as police officers entered the hall. Eleanor would be taken away to give a statement. The charges were already piling up. But the real trial had already taken place, broadcast live to thousands of people. What Eleanor could never have imagined was that a simple black cleaning lady, underestimated for 2 decades, possessed a weapon that money cannot buy, the courage to do the right thing when everyone else prefers convenient silence. 6 months later, Diane was sitting in the front row of a packed auditorium in Boston. Not as a cleaning lady, but as a guest of honor. Sophia, now 24, took the stage to receive the Human Rights Defender Award from the foundation she had created, Invisible Voices, an organization dedicated to exposing cases of domestic abuse in wealthy families. Eleanor's trial had been swift and devastating. The recordings, the documents, Sophia's testimony broadcast live on that fateful afternoon, all became irrefutable evidence. Eleanor Whitmore was sentenced to 8 years in prison for unlawful confinement, attempted forced hospitalization, and psychological abuse. Her fortune was partially confiscated to compensate the victim. But the real punishment did not come from the courts. It came from the society Eleanor cherished so much. Her name became synonymous with hypocrisy. Friends abandoned her. Exclusive clubs revoked her membership. The Whitmore mansion was sold to pay damages and is being converted into a shelter for victims of family abuse. Christopher, Eleanor's son, publicly broke with his mother and became close to Sophia. They discovered they had more in common than blood. Both were victims of Eleanor's obsessive control. Today they are close, rebuilding the concept of family based on choice, not obligation. Eleanor, at 75, is serving her sentence in a state prison. Her letters asking Sophia for forgiveness are returned unanswered. Not out of cruelty, but because Sophia has learned that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and that some bridges are burned for good reason. On stage, Sophia held the trophy and looked for Diane in the audience. None of this would exist without a woman who had every reason to stay quiet and none to risk everything. Diane Washington worked 20 years in silence, underestimated, invisible, treated like furniture. Sophia's voice trembled. But when she saw injustice, she didn't ask if it was her problem. She asked how she could solve it. The applause exploded. Diane felt tears streaming down her face, but not from sadness. From relief. From victory. After losing her job at the Whitmore mansion, something she knew would happen, Diane wasn't unemployed for long. The viral interviews brought offers from all over the country. She chose to work as a consultant at Sophia's foundation, training other victims to document abuse and expose truths safely and strategically. Her daughter, who had dropped out of college due to lack of money, is now studying law on a full scholarship at Harvard. "I'm going to be a lawyer like my mother wanted," she told Diane. "But I'm going to defend people like you. The invisible ones. The underestimated ones." Reverend Marcus Thompson expanded the church's support program. Today, they welcome dozens of domestic workers who face abuse, offering legal and psychological support. Diane showed us that to witness evil and not act is to be an accomplice, he preaches on Sundays. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of it. In the viral video from that afternoon, which surpassed 40 million views, the most liked comments weren't about Eleanor's fall. They were about Diane. "This woman is a true hero," someone wrote. "Revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's building something greater than their evil." Sophia stepped off the stage and hugged Diane, who was now more than a savior. She was chosen family. "You gave me more than freedom," Sophia whispered. "You gave me dignity." "You always had dignity," Diane replied. "I just made sure the world saw it." That night, Diane returned to the small apartment she could now afford without relying on cruel employers. She looked out the window at the brightly lit city and thought of all the Sophias still hidden in walls, in basements, in bought silence. She thought of all the Dianes who still clean houses in silence, keeping secrets that should be shouted from the rooftops. And she knew that the story she had lived was not hers alone. It was a manual. Living proof that justice does not always come from above. Sometimes it comes from below, from the hands that clean the marble floors, from the voices that society has trained to remain silent. Eleanor tried to erase Sophia from existence. She ended up being erased from her own story, remembered only as an example of what not to be. Sophia, the mistake daughter, became a reference for resilience. And Diane, the invisible cleaning lady, proved that the most attentive eyes are those that society ignores. The best revenge is not to lower those who lowered you. It is to rise so high that they have to look up to see you. It is to turn pain into purpose, silence into voice, invisibility into legacy.